Good evening. Welcome to the Math Department presentation. We're glad you're here this evening and just have a few details that we would like to share with you. To begin with, we'll just like to do some introductions. And so first of all, I am not Mr. Decker. I am not Mr. Altoff. They are working with the students next door. I am Mr. John Timmer. I teach Accelerated Algebra 2 and Statistics. I also spend some time with administrative work here. To my right is Miss Ashley Van Scheppen. She does some 8th grade math, some 9th grade algebra, as well as personal finance. She will be participating in the second part of the presentation. So while we're here tonight, the question that we really want to answer is, what should we be doing in math class here at Calvin Christian High School? And so we made it a multiple choice question. Obviously we can focus on patterns, equations, graphs, problem solving, all these good mathematical ideas. But as you've already heard, the mission for our school is loving, learning, and serving. So shouldn't we be focusing on that? And if we're working from a Christian perspective, Christian worldview often talks about we believe in the creation, fall of man, redemption, and restoration. So what should we be doing in math class? Well, hopefully the answer is all of the above. We want to focus on all of those things in our mathematics classrooms. And so I'm just going to give a brief overview of how we attempt to do those things. So we're going to follow the theme of our mission of loving, learning, and serving. And so in terms of loving, a starting point we use in our mathematics classes is, yes, we investigate patterns and rules. But the joy of working at a Christian school is we can say we know God created all of those things. And so we serve a loving God who made a beautiful world for us to explore and to investigate. And so that is where all our learning begins. But God did not create just the world. He also created each one of us. And so therefore we are created in His image. We can therefore celebrate that we have gifts and talents. We also want to express the fact that God asks us to love one another. And so we can learn in community. We can also love one another and support one another because we know we are created in God's image. When we move on to the learning, obviously we are going to focus on a lot of mathematics. We are going to study patterns and equations. We obviously are going to teach your students how to complete calculations. But more than that, we want your students to be able to delve farther into things. And so once we've done our calculations and determined our models, our students need to be equipped to make decisions. They need to be prepared to solve real-life problems. Real-life problems can be fairly complicated. This graph is something we do in Algebra 2, part of a project. And as you can see, working with this small amount of data leads to lots of possible answers. And so the students are challenged to evaluate what's the best choice to make. But this also gives us an opportunity when we talk decision making to realize that as Christians we also believe we live in a fallen world. Not everyone seeks to find the best answer. They often distort the truth or manipulate things to support what they want rather than being truthful. This simple graph where Republicans support the court 54% of the time and Democrats 62% of the time, that is a small difference. But the graph is exaggerated to make it look like they're greatly different. We need to equip our students to realize that there are good ways to use math and there are sinful ways to do math, and we hope to equip your children to make good decisions. And so when they make those decisions, we feel that is related to the fact that God calls us to go serve in our world. He has redeemed every part of the world. That includes mathematics. And we want our students to be equipped to be His servants, to be acting in truthful manners, to seek justice, and use their mathematical abilities to make a difference in the world. At this point, I'm going to hand things off to Mrs. Van Scheppen, who will be focusing on some more specifics in the classroom.
All right, so if you were to come into a math classroom, what would you expect to see? Well, for one, you'll see collaboration. Our students are often working together, whether it's on an assignment or a project. And the reason they are doing that often is because we're trying to teach them how to communicate mathematically. We want students to be able to not only know how to do a problem, but be able to explain it, not just say, my calculator did it for me. And we also want students to be able to critically think when they hear another person explaining. We want them to be able to process, does this make sense to me as well? We will also see a lot of different teaching methods. Some of our classes use the flipped classroom model, but you will also see investigations taking place. You will see discussions, you'll see direct teaching and other activities like whiteboards, etc. In the classroom, we also will use our technology regularly. We have Chromebooks that we use on a daily basis, whether it's for an online textbook or using different websites that we can look at an investigation or model a different equation. We will also be using other various things. We have a geometric sketch pad that is available in our computer labs for geometry class too. We focus a lot on projects in our math department too. So each year there's different projects, and so one of them I was going to highlight from a few classes. This one's for algebra. We have students look at how can we use the math that we've been learning and apply it to the real world. So students are asked, after we've learned and explored some exponents and exponential equations, how can I model potentially what's happening in our tuition for college? Tuition is on the increase, and so students are looking at what kind of mathematical model can I use to show how, like, Calvin College or another college is increasing its rates each year, and use that to make predictions then of, all right, if I am to go to college in 4 years, what would be the cost for my freshman year, my sophomore year, etc. So students learn how to write those equations, get that data, etc. In geometry, they look at how to model with floor plans, and so when they're studying area and scales and drawing, they look at what can I do to represent a certain room or house in the area and model those too. And then finally on Algebra 2, you saw this graph a few moments ago, but basically this is a debt project where students are looking at the national debt, and they look at a few years and what our debt was on those during those times. And so they're then asked to create a couple different models based off of what we've been studying. So you see 3 different graphs, and so they're asked to see which one is the best fit. And then not only are they looking at that and exploring and trying to see, all right, what have I learned mathematically, but as Mr. Timmer mentioned, how can I make sense of this? Does it seem like this would be the best approach? We're asked to have students then also say, well, this model shows that it's decreasing, and so we learned that math can be used to distort. Like I can say, oh, I want to present this model to everybody because it shows our debt's going to go down, but is that really the best model that we should be using? So students are learning discernment and applying the math we've learned to real life situations when we use projects. How do we challenge students in the classroom? We offer the projects where we can have students that are doing well to expand and explore these concepts in more depth and detail. And then those that are struggling a little bit, we can break things down into smaller chunks, give them more guided instruction as well. We offer accelerated classes and AP classes, and we've also had interest in the last few years that we've had a math club. How do we support students? We support students through differentiation. We allow students to be met where they are needed. So if they are struggling, we'll help them in those areas, and we'll make some modifications for them, and same thing for those that are excelling. As teachers, we want our students to succeed. We'll do whatever that takes, and so if that means meeting them outside of the classroom, we can make arrangements for that. If needed, we also have a support system in place school-wide that we use, and this allows us as teachers, not just, hey, if I have a student, I know that the student's struggling, but all the teachers know, so that if they had a student not in my math class, but I had them in a study hall, I could then step in and help them out in study hall. Or we offer Learning Lab after school as well, and we can just have that communication line open so that students are going to not fall between the cracks, and we also are able to intervene at an early stage too. So even though we don't have much time to go over these options, there's just a couple routes that a student could take when they're at high school. So if you have questions or a specific thing you would like to discuss with us about this, will be available in the gym after all the presentations tonight. So thank you.